In my 42 years as a high school English teacher in Richmond Hill, Ontario, I learned that phone calls after midnight are never about good news. The truly desperate ones come between 2 and 4 in the morning, when hope has worn thin and fear has taken over completely. That's when my phone rang on a Tuesday in late October. I fumbled for my glasses on the nightstand, my heart already racing. The screen showed an unknown number, but something made me answer anyway. Mr. Chen? The voice was barely a whisper, choked with tears. It's Sophie. Sophie Brennan. I didn't know who else to call. I sat up immediately, suddenly wide awake. Sophie Brennan, one of my top students from 3 years ago, before I retired. Brilliant writer, varsity soccer player, university bound with a full scholarship to McGill. I'd written her recommendation letter myself. Sophie, what's wrong? Where are you? I'm at North York General. Her voice cracked. They say I fell down the stairs. But Mr. Chen, I didn't fall. My stepmother. She pushed me. And now Dad won't believe me. And Dr. Morrison says I'm making it up for attention. And the social worker believes them, not me. And I don't know what to do anymore. The words tumbled out in a panicked rush, each one hitting me like a physical blow. I could hear the raw terror beneath them, the kind that comes from feeling completely alone in the world. Sophie, listen to me carefully. Are you safe right now? I think so. They want to discharge me in the morning. Send me home with her. A pause. Mr. Chen, I'm so scared, nobody believes me. The therapist has notes saying I'm jealous and acting out. Even my best friend Madison won't return my calls anymore. And my stepmother, she's the principal at Meadowvale Academy. Everyone thinks she's perfect. My blood ran cold. A principal. Someone with authority, connections, the trust of an entire community. Someone who would know exactly how to manipulate the system. I need you to stay exactly where you are, I said, already reaching for my clothes with my free hand. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'm coming there right now. But what can you do? You're retired, you don't have any power. Just retired. The words stung, but I understood them. What could a 64-year-old former English teacher do against a respected principal with money and influence? Sophie, I taught you for 2 years. You were never a liar, never manipulative, never anything but honest and hardworking. If you're calling me at 3 in the morning, terrified, then something is very, very wrong, and I'm going to figure out what it is. I heard her breath catch, then a sob. Thank you. Room 412, North Wing. The drive to North York General took 20 minutes through empty streets. 20 minutes during which my mind raced through everything I knew about Sophie Brennan. She'd been in my grade 11 and 12 English classes. Sharp mind, creative writer, always prepared. Her mother had died when she was 13. Breast cancer. Her father was a cardiovascular surgeon at Sunnybrook, Dr. James Brennan. Dedicated to his work, sometimes to the point of obsession, but clearly loved his daughter. He'd come to parent-teacher conferences, praised her accomplishments, seemed genuinely proud. Then, in Sophie's final year, he'd remarried. Victoria Brennan, née Morrison. I'd met her once at graduation. Polished, professional, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been recently appointed principal at Meadowvale Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the GTA. I remembered thinking she seemed calculating. The way she'd positioned herself in photos, controlled conversations, presented a perfect image. I'd lost touch with Sophie after she graduated. The occasional email updating me on university, but that had tapered off this past year. Now I understood why. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I made my way to the 4th floor. Room 412 was at the end of a quiet hallway. Sophie was sitting up in bed, her left arm in a sling, a bandage above her right eye. But it was her eyes that shocked me most. They had the hollow, haunted look I'd seen before in students facing trauma they couldn't escape. Mr. Chen. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You actually came. I pulled a chair close to her bedside. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. The story she told over the next hour painted a picture of systematic abuse that had begun subtly and escalated over 18 months. It started after the wedding. Small things at first. Victoria suggesting Sophie's choice of university wasn't ambitious enough, criticizing her appearance, her friends, her interests. Comments disguised as concern. "Your father works so hard, Sophie. You should be more appreciative. That outfit makes you look heavier than you are, dear. Maybe you should focus more on academics instead of soccer. You're not going professional anyway." Then came the isolation. Victoria convinced Dr. Brennan that Sophie's friends were bad influences. Madison, Sophie's best friend since kindergarten, was suddenly using Sophie for her family's money. The soccer team was interfering with her studies. One by one, the connections were severed. "She made everything seem like it was Dad's idea," Sophie said quietly. But it was always her whispering in his ear. "He's so tired from work, so stressed, he just plays." He believes whatever she says now. The financial control came next. Sophie's college fund, left by her mother, was in a joint account with her father. Victoria, as his wife, had access. Over the past year, $73,000 had been transferred out. When Sophie discovered it by accident and confronted Victoria, that's when things turned violent. She grabbed my wrist so hard it left bruises, said I was ungrateful, that the money was being invested properly, that I had no right to question adult decisions. Sophie's voice shook. I showed Dad the bruises. She said I must have gotten them at soccer practice and forgotten. Dad believed her. Then came Dr. Morrison, the family therapist. Victoria had insisted they start family counseling to help Sophie adjust to the new family dynamic. But the sessions were anything but therapeutic. Dr. Morrison is Victoria's friend from university. Every session, she'd twist everything I said. I'd mention feeling controlled. She'd write down, experiencing normal adolescent rebellion. I'd say I was scared. She'd note, attention-seeking behavior. After 3 months, her report said I was showing signs of adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood, and recommended medication. "Did you take it?" I asked carefully. Dad insisted. But it made me feel wrong. Foggy, disconnected. I couldn't focus on my schoolwork. I started missing assignments for the first time in my life. Victoria told everyone I was having teenage issues. When I tried to stop taking the pills, Dad said I was being non-compliant with treatment. The pieces were falling into place, creating a horrifying picture. But Sophie wasn't finished. Last week, I found a pill bottle in Victoria's bathroom cabinet. Alprazolam. High dose. The prescription was in Dad's name, but I've never seen him take them. I looked up the pills I'd been taking. They were supposed to be antidepressants, but they looked exactly like the alprazolam. My hands clenched on the chair arms. "She was drugging you." Sophie nodded, wiping her eyes. I started pretending to take them, but hiding them instead. Within 3 days, I felt clearer. That's when I realized how bad things had gotten. I'd lost touch with all my friends. My grades had dropped from an A average to barely passing. I'd given up soccer, debate team, everything I loved. I barely recognized myself anymore. What happened tonight? I confronted Victoria. Told her I knew about the pills, about the money, about everything. She was in the upstairs hallway. Dad was at the hospital on call. She got this look on her face. Mr. Chen, cold. Like a mask had slipped. She said, "Nobody will believe you. I'm a principal, your father's wife, a respected member of this community. You're an unstable teenager with documented mental health issues." Then she stepped toward me, and I backed up, and Sophie's breath came faster. I felt her hands on my shoulders. A push. I was at the top of the stairs, and then I was falling. I remember hitting the railing, the wall, trying to grab something. Then nothing until I woke up here. "And they believe you fell?" Victoria told the paramedics she found me at the bottom of the stairs. Said I'd been acting erratic lately. Wasn't taking my medication properly. Probably got dizzy. The doctor here agreed it was consistent with a fall. My injuries are a dislocated shoulder, sprained wrist, cut above my eye, bruised ribs. Victoria stayed with me the whole time in emergency, playing the concerned stepmother. She even cried. Dad's on his way back from the hospital now. What about the social worker? She came, asked me some questions. But with Dr. Morrison's reports and Victoria's professional reputation, she said teenagers sometimes have conflicts with step-parents, that family therapy would help, that there was no evidence of abuse. Mr. Chen, there's a bruise on my shoulder blade shaped exactly like Victoria's ring, but nobody will look at it. They just see what they want to see. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark Toronto skyline. 42 years of teaching had taught me to read people, to spot when something was wrong with a student. Every instinct I had was screaming that Sophie was telling the truth. But she was right about one thing. I was just a retired teacher. No badge, no authority, no power. What could I possibly do against a respected principal, a prominent surgeon, a licensed therapist, and a system that had already decided this was just a troubled teenager? Then I remembered something, a name I hadn't thought about in years. Sophie. Did Victoria work anywhere before Meadowvale Academy? She thought for a moment. Dad mentioned she was vice principal at Thornhill Heights Secondary for a few years before that. Why? Because in 42 years I taught at 5 different schools across the GTA. I know a lot of teachers. And teachers talk. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There, Margaret Liu. We'd taught together at Thornhill Heights 15 years ago, before she'd transferred to administration. If Victoria Morrison had worked there, Margaret would know. It was nearly 5 in the morning, but I called anyway. Margaret answered on the 4th ring, groggy but alert. Robert? What's wrong? I need to ask you about someone. Victoria Morrison. She worked at Thornhill Heights as vice principal. There was a long pause. Then Margaret's voice came back, carefully neutral. Why are you asking about her? Because I have a student in the hospital who says Victoria pushed her down the stairs, and I think I believe her. Another pause. Can you come to my house? This isn't a conversation for the phone. I looked at Sophie. Will you be all right for a couple of hours? Don't sign anything. Don't agree to go home. Insist on staying for observation. She nodded, some color returning to her face. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago when I was still teaching. Pay attention when something doesn't feel right. Margaret Liu lived in Markham, a neat townhouse in a quiet neighborhood. She opened the door before I could knock, coffee already brewing. Tell me about the student first, she said as we sat at her kitchen table. I explained about Sophie. Everything. The isolation, the financial abuse, the drugging, the fall. Margaret's expression grew darker with every detail. Sophie Brennan, she said finally. Dr. James Brennan's daughter? You know them? I know of them. Victoria made quite sure everyone knew when she married a prominent surgeon. She took a sip of coffee. Robert, there was another stepdaughter. Before. My heart sank. Tell me. Victoria's first marriage was to Thomas Morrison, a corporate lawyer. He had a daughter from his first marriage, Emma. She was 14 when they married. 2 years later, Emma was admitted to the psychiatric ward at St. Michael's after a suicide attempt. What happened? The official story was that Emma couldn't adjust to having a stepmother, was depressed about her biological mother's remarriage, struggled with anxiety. Victoria stood by her publicly, talked about the challenges of blended families, even gave an interview to the Toronto Star about supporting troubled teens. Very sympathetic, very convincing. And the unofficial story? Margaret met my eyes. I was friends with Emma's homeroom teacher. She said Emma was a happy, well-adjusted kid until Victoria came into the picture. Then suddenly she was having problems. Grades dropped, became withdrawn. The teacher tried to raise concerns, but Emma's father dismissed them. Victoria was a vice principal, after all. Surely she knew what she was doing. Did Emma ever say what really happened? Not directly. But her teacher noticed things. Emma always wore long sleeves, even in summer, flinched at sudden movements, stopped eating lunch. Classic signs. But every time anyone raised concerns, Victoria had an explanation. Emma was going through a phase. She was attention-seeking. She needed medication. The teacher pushed for a proper investigation, but Victoria's professional reputation protected her. What happened to Emma? After the suicide attempt, she lived in a group home for a while. then went to live with her biological mother in Vancouver. Thomas Morrison and Victoria divorced quietly a year later. No drama, just a quick dissolution. Victoria got a generous settlement and immediately started working on her image rehabilitation. New job, new city, new husband. Dr. Brennan, a widower with a daughter. Vulnerable, grieving, devoted to his work, the perfect target. I felt sick. This is a pattern. I believe so. But Robert, I had no proof, just suspicions. And by the time I connected the dots, Victoria had already moved to Meadowvale Academy. I thought about reaching out, but what could I say? That I had a bad feeling about her? We need to find Emma. Margaret was already reaching for her laptop. I stayed in touch with her old teacher. Let me see if she has any contact information. While Margaret searched, I called Sophie. Her father had arrived at the hospital and was insisting she come home immediately. Victoria was there too, playing the worried stepmother perfectly. Tell him you want to stay one more day for observation, I said. Say you're dizzy, still in pain. Buy me some time. He's really angry, Mr. Chen. Says I'm being dramatic. Sophie, I need you to trust me a little longer. I think I've found something, but I need proof. Okay. Her voice was small. I'll try. Margaret looked up from her laptop. I found her. Emma Morrison, now Emma Chen. She changed her name. She's 22, studying social work at UBC. Her old teacher gave me her email. I composed a message, trying to find words that wouldn't sound insane. Finally, I settled on honesty. Emma, my name is Robert Chen. I'm a retired teacher in Ontario. I believe your former stepmother, Victoria Morrison, is abusing another stepdaughter. The girl is in danger. If you're willing to talk about what happened to you, it might save her life. Please call me. I included my phone number and hit send, feeling the weight of a long shot. Emma had no reason to trust a stranger, no reason to relive what must have been a traumatic period of her life. My phone rang 6 minutes later. Is this Robert Chen? A young woman's voice, controlled but tense. Emma? You said Victoria is doing it again. To another girl. Her name is Sophie. She's 17. It's been going on for 18 months. What's she doing? Emma's voice was steady now, clinical, like she was preparing for battle. I told her everything Sophie had told me. The isolation, the financial manipulation, the drugging, the push down the stairs, the cover-up network of professionals who all trusted Victoria's reputation over a teenager's word. When I finished, Emma was silent for a long moment. It's exactly what she did to me, she said finally. Every single detail. The criticism disguised as concern, cutting me off from friends and activities. The fake therapy with her friend who documented me as mentally unstable. The medication that wasn't what they said it was. Even the financial manipulation. My trust fund from my mom, $70,000. Just gone. Invested in better opportunities, Victoria said. The same amount Sophie lost. She has a number. That's what I figured out later. 73,000 is just below the threshold that triggers automatic bank reviews. She knows exactly how much she can take without raising red flags. Emma, would you be willing to testify? To tell your story officially? I've been waiting 5 years for someone to ask me that question. Yes, absolutely yes. But Mr. Chen, you need to understand something. Victoria is very, very good at what she does. She'll have documentation, witnesses, professional opinions, all supporting her version of events. You can't just go to the police. They won't believe you. Then what do I do? You build a case. A real one. Evidence. Documentation. Testimony from multiple sources. You prove the pattern, and you do it before she escalates. Because she will escalate. When Victoria feels threatened, when she thinks someone might expose her, she doesn't back down. She destroys them. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? After my suicide attempt, I tried to tell people what really happened. The hospital psychiatrist, the social worker, anyone who would listen. Victoria responded by getting an order that I was a danger to myself and others. She had me involuntarily committed for 3 months. 3 months in a psychiatric facility because I told the truth. By the time I got out, nobody believed anything I said anymore. I was just the crazy stepdaughter with documented mental illness. Sophie said Victoria threatened to have her committed. She will? The moment Sophie becomes a real threat, Victoria will have her committed to a psychiatric facility. She has the professional credentials to make it happen, and Sophie already has Dr. Morrison's documentation of mental instability. It's the perfect trap. How do I stop her? You need 3 things. First, hard evidence of the financial theft. Bank records showing the transfers. Second, proof that Dr. Morrison is unethical, that her therapy notes are falsified. Third, my testimony establishing a pattern of behavior. But you need all 3 at once. If Victoria gets wind that you're investigating, she'll move first. How long do I have? Sophie confronted her and survived. Victoria's first move will be to isolate her completely. She'll push for immediate psychiatric commitment, claiming Sophie is a danger to herself. Once Sophie is committed, it's over. Nobody listens to mentally ill teenagers, especially when a respected principal is saying they need help. So I have maybe 24 hours. If that. Mr. Chen, I know we've never met, but thank you. Thank you for believing Sophie. Thank you for believing me. After what happened, I thought about becoming a social worker so I could help other kids in similar situations, but I never thought I'd get a chance to stop Victoria herself. I'll call you back when I have something. Can you fly out here? I'm already looking at flights. There's one at noon. I'll be in Toronto by tonight. I hung up and turned to Margaret. I need to access bank records without a warrant. Know anyone who can help? She smiled grimly. I taught for 42 years too, Robert. You know what that means? I taught the children of lawyers, accountants, tech workers, everyone. Let me make some calls. While Margaret worked her network, I drove back to the hospital. Sophie was still there, but Dr. Brennan and Victoria were in the hallway arguing with the attending physician. There's no medical reason to keep her, Victoria was saying, her voice perfectly modulated with concern. She needs to be home, in a stable environment, where we can supervise her properly. Dr. Morrison has already called in a prescription for her medication. I stepped forward. Dr. Brennan, Mrs. Brennan, I'm Robert Chen, Sophie's former teacher. Victoria's eyes locked onto me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker there. Calculation. Threat assessment. Then her expression smoothed into polite confusion. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, was it? I don't believe we've met. We met briefly at Sophie's graduation. I taught her English for 2 years. How kind of you to visit. Her smile didn't waver. But this is a family matter. Sophie needs rest and privacy right now. Sophie called me, I said calmly, watching her face. At 3 this morning. She was frightened and needed someone to talk to. Dr. Brennan frowned. She called you? Why would she do that? Because she trusts me. And because she's scared to go home. That's ridiculous, Victoria said, her voice sharpening slightly. Sophie has been experiencing some difficulties adjusting lately. Her therapist has documented emotional dysregulation and attention-seeking behaviors. This is exactly the kind of dramatic gesture Dr. Morrison warned us about. Is it attention-seeking to have a bruise on her shoulder blade in the exact shape of a ring? Because Sophie has one. And I've seen the ring you're wearing right now, Mrs. Brennan. It would match perfectly. The hallway went silent. Victoria's smile finally faded. Mr. Chen, I don't know what Sophie has told you, but I can assure you it's not based in reality. She's been struggling with mental health issues for months. The family has been very worried. Worried enough to drain $73,000 from her college fund? Dr. Brennan's head snapped toward his wife. What is he talking about? James, this is absurd. The money was reinvested through my financial advisor. I've told you this. Show me the paperwork, I said. Right now. Show Dr. Brennan where his daughter's money went. Victoria's composure cracked for just a moment. I don't have to justify our family's financial decisions to a retired teacher who has no business being here. You're right, I agreed. You don't have to justify it to me. But you will have to justify it to the police when I report suspected financial abuse of a minor. You're going to believe him? Victoria turned to her husband, her voice rising. A stranger who Sophie called in the middle of the night? James, This is exactly what Dr. Morrison warned about. Sophie is manipulating people, creating drama, trying to split our family apart. But Dr. Brennan was looking at me differently now. What bruise? What are you talking about? Your daughter has a mark on her back that indicates she was pushed. The impact point is consistent with a ring striking her shoulder blade before she fell. I think if you look closely at Sophie's injuries, you'll find they're not consistent with a simple fall downstairs. This is outrageous, Victoria said. James, I will not stand here and be accused of harming Sophie. If this man doesn't leave immediately, I'm calling security. No, Dr. Brennan said quietly. No, I want to see this bruise. We walked into Sophie's room together. She looked up fearfully, her eyes widening when she saw Victoria behind her father. Sophie, Dr. Brennan said, his voice strained. Mr. Chen says you have a bruise. Can you show me? Sophie hesitated, glancing at Victoria. Then, slowly, she turned and lifted the back of her hospital gown. The mark was clear and undeniable, a circular impression, approximately 2 centimeters in diameter, already turning purple-black. Beside it, faint scratches that could have been made by fingernails. Dr. Brennan stared at it for a long moment. Then he looked at his wife's hand, at the distinctive ring she wore. A family heirloom, she'd told everyone. Large setting, unique design. Victoria, he said slowly, how did Sophie get this bruise? James, I have no idea. She must have hit something when she fell. You can't possibly think it's the exact shape of your ring. Coincidence. James, please, you can't believe. Show me the financial paperwork, he said, his voice changing, becoming colder. Show me where Sophie's money is right now. This isn't the time or place. Show me now. Victoria's mask was slipping. I could see the anger beneath it, the calculation. She was trying to decide whether to keep playing the role or drop it entirely. Sophie, I said quietly, tell your father about the medication. And Sophie did. She told him about the pills that made her foggy and disconnected, about finding the alprazolam in Victoria's cabinet, about pretending to take them and suddenly feeling clear again. Dr. Brennan's face went white. You gave her benzodiazepines? Without my knowledge? She needed help with anxiety. You're not a physician. You can't prescribe medication. Dr. Morrison agreed. Dr. Morrison is your friend. His voice was rising now. Months of suppressed doubt finally breaking through. You've been telling me everything is Sophie's fault, that she's the problem, that she needs help. But what if it's been you all along? Victoria's expression hardened. James, you're being manipulated by your daughter and by this stranger. Sophie is mentally unstable. She needs psychiatric help, not accusations and drama. I've been trying to hold this family together while she tears it apart. No, Dr. Brennan said. No, I'm taking Sophie home with me. Not with you. With me. We're going to have a long conversation, and then we're going to figure out what's really been happening. You can't do that. I'm her stepmother. I have rights. You have no rights, the words exploded out of him. She's my daughter. Mine. And if you touched her, if you hurt her, I will make sure you pay for it. Victoria stood there, frozen. Then her phone rang. She glanced at it, and I saw something flash across her face. Fear. She answered it, listened for a moment, then ended the call. When she looked up, her expression was glacial. This isn't over, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked out. I had maybe 3 hours before Victoria made her move. I knew what it would be. She'd go to Dr. Morrison, get an emergency psychiatric evaluation, petition for Sophie to be involuntarily committed. With her professional credentials and Morrison's documentation, a judge would sign the order. Sophie would be locked in a psychiatric facility, and everything she said would be dismissed as delusion. Unless I moved first. Margaret called. I have something. My former student works at the bank. She can't officially tell us anything, but she did confirm that there are red flags on Victoria's account. Multiple large transfers over the past 2 years, all just under reporting thresholds. She's flagging it for investigation, but that could take weeks. We don't have weeks. I know. So she gave me something off the record. Screenshots. If you need them, you have them. But Robert, if this goes to court, they won't be admissible because of how they were obtained. I don't need them for court. I need them to convince someone to listen. Next, I called Emma. Can you get me Dr. Morrison's credentials? Everything about her license, her practice, her relationship with Victoria? Already on it. I've been researching for the past 3 hours. Dr. Allison Morrison, licensed psychologist, but here's the interesting part. She's been reprimanded twice by the College of Psychologists of Ontario. Once for dual relationships with clients, once for inadequate record-keeping. Both times, Victoria provided character references that helped her avoid license suspension. They protect each other. More than that, I think Victoria finds people she can control. Dr. Morrison, probably others. People with their own problems, their own vulnerabilities. Then she uses them as her network when she needs credibility. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Victoria just called Dad. Said she's petitioning for emergency psychiatric hold. Dr. Morrison filed report saying I'm danger to myself. Police are coming to take me to facility for evaluation. Dad's trying to stop it, but lawyer says it's legal. Time was up. I called the one person who might be able to help. Detective Sarah Kwan, Toronto Police Service, Domestic Violence Unit. We'd worked together 15 years ago on a case involving one of my students. She'd believed me then when no one else did. Robert Chen, she said when she answered. Haven't heard from you in years. Please tell me this is a social call. I wish it was. Sarah, I need help. A student of mine is being abused by her stepmother, who's managed to manipulate the system perfectly. She's about to have the girl committed to a psychiatric facility to silence her. What kind of evidence do you have? Another victim from 5 years ago, with an identical story. Bank records showing financial fraud, a therapist with ethics violations, and a pattern that I think goes back even further. That's actually substantial. Send me everything. I forwarded Emma's information, Margaret's bank screenshots, and the photos I'd taken of Sophie's injuries. Robert, this is good work, but we need more to stop an emergency psychiatric hold. Those are legal if signed by a licensed physician. What if the physician is part of the abuse? Then we need to prove it. Fast. What about the social worker who came to the hospital? Can you contact her? What's her name? I got it from Sophie. Detective Kwan called her. Put it on speaker. Miss Rodriguez, this is Detective Kwan, Toronto Police. I understand you evaluated Sophie Brennan this morning at North York General. I need to ask you some questions about your assessment. The social worker sounded defensive. I followed standard procedure. The stepmother seemed genuinely concerned. The psychiatrist's notes indicated mental health issues. Did you examine Sophie's injuries thoroughly? The medical staff already did that. They were consistent with a fall. Did you look at the bruise on her shoulder blade? The one shaped like a ring? Silence. What bruise? The one that indicates she was pushed, not fell. No one mentioned a specific bruise. The report said contusions consistent with impact. And did you verify the financial information? The fact that $73,000 is missing from Sophie's account? That's not within my purview. I assess immediate safety. What about the medication she was being given? Did you check whether it matched the prescription? The stepmother is a school principal. The psychiatrist is licensed. I had no reason to doubt. You had a 17-year-old girl with suspicious injuries telling you she was pushed, and you didn't investigate because the adults had credentials. Miss Rodriguez, I need you to file an amended report immediately. Include the information about the bruise and the financial irregularities. If you don't, and something happens to this girl, you'll be held responsible. I heard the social worker's breath catch. I'll file it now. Today. Detective Kwon hung up and turned to me. That buys us maybe 12 hours. The amended report will slow down the psychiatric hold, but not stop it if Dr. Morrison pushes hard enough. We need to hit Victoria and Morrison together, make the case that they're working in concert. Emma's flying in tonight. She can testify. Good. Meanwhile, I'm going to pay Dr. Morrison a visit. Ask her some questions about her treatment of Sophie. See if her story holds up under pressure. While Detective Kwan worked her angle, I went back to Sophie's hospital room. Dr. Brennan was there, sitting beside his daughter's bed, holding her hand. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. "Mr. Chen," he said when I entered, "I owe you an apology. I should have listened to my daughter. What matters is that you're listening now." I kept telling myself she was just having trouble adjusting, that Victoria was trying so hard, and Sophie was being difficult. But it wasn't adjustment trouble, was it? It was survival. Sophie was trying to survive in her own home, and I wasn't protecting her. Sophie squeezed his hand. "Dad, she's really good at manipulation. She fooled everyone." "Not everyone," Dr. Brennan said, looking at me. Mr. Chen saw through her. "I recognize the signs because I've spent 40 years watching teenagers. When a good student like Sophie suddenly falls apart, it's never just adjustment issues. Something is always wrong." Dr. Brennan's phone rang. He looked at it and his expression hardened. "It's my lawyer. Victoria has filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I'm being manipulated into making false accusations. She's also petitioned for emergency custody of Sophie on the grounds that I'm not capable of making rational decisions about her care." "She's escalating," I said. "My lawyer says she has Dr. Morrison's support, 2 other physicians willing to testify about my recent irrational behavior, and documentation showing that Sophie has been in crisis for months. She's claiming she's the only stable adult in Sophie's life right now." Sophie made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "She's going to win, isn't she? She always wins." "No," I said firmly. "She doesn't. Not this time. Because this time, someone's paying attention." My phone rang. "Emma." "Mr. Chen, I'm at the airport. But I found something else. I've been going through old newspapers looking for any mention of Victoria. I found an article from 12 years ago. Before Emma Morrison, before Sophie, there was another girl." My blood ran cold. "Tell me." "Samantha Porter. Victoria was married to her father, David Porter, for 2 years. Samantha was 15 when the marriage ended. She disappeared 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Her body was found 6 months later in Rouge Park. Official cause of death was overdose, ruled accidental. But you don't think it was. I think Victoria has been doing this for a long time, Mr. Chen, and I think she's willing to do whatever it takes to protect herself." I looked at Sophie, sitting in that hospital bed, vulnerable and terrified. Emma was right. Victoria was escalating, and if we didn't stop her now, Sophie might not survive this. "Emma, when you land, go straight to police headquarters. Ask for Detective Kwan. Tell her everything." I called Detective Kwan and told her about Samantha Porter. "I'll pull the file," she said. "If there's any indication of foul play, we can reopen it. Robert, you need to get Sophie somewhere safe. If Victoria is as dangerous as you think, that hospital room isn't secure enough. Where can we go?" "Bring her to the station. We'll keep her in protective custody while we build the case." Dr. Brennan and I got Sophie discharged against medical advice and drove to the police station. Victoria called Dr. Brennan's phone 17 times during the drive. He didn't answer. Detective Kwan met us in a conference room. Emma arrived an hour later, pale but determined. Seeing Emma and Sophie in the same room was eerie. They could have been sisters. Same age when it started, same tactics used against them, same pattern of abuse. "Tell me everything," Detective Kwan said, recording device on the table. "Every detail from both of you." They talked for 4 hours. Emma's story from 5 years ago, Sophie's from the past 18 months. The similarities were undeniable. The same financial manipulation, the same isolation tactics, the same drugging, the same fake therapy documentation. Even the same amount stolen. Detective Kwan made notes, asked questions, pulled up files on her computer. "Dr. Morrison has 3 ethics complaints in addition to the 2 reprimands," she said. "All were withdrawn before investigation. All 3 complainants received financial settlements. All 3 had Victoria Brennan listed as a character reference. She's been protecting Morrison for years," Emma said, "in exchange for falsified documentation when she needs it." "What about Samantha Porter?" I asked. Detective Kwan pulled up another file, ruled accidental overdose, but the investigating officer noted several inconsistencies. Samantha had no history of drug use. The drugs in her system were prescription medications that weren't prescribed to her. And 3 days before her death, she'd told a school counselor she was afraid of her stepmother and planning to go to the police. But no one followed up, I said. The stepmother was Victoria Brennan, who at that time was a vice principal with an impeccable reputation. Samantha's father insisted his daughter was troubled. The case was closed. Sophie had gone very pale. She killed her? We don't know that for certain, Detective Kwan said carefully, but the circumstances are suspicious enough to warrant reopening the investigation. She's going to kill me too, Sophie whispered. That's what this is about. I'm a loose end. I know too much. No one is going to kill you, Dr. Brennan said firmly, pulling his daughter close. I won't let that happen. Sophie, I need you to do something difficult, Detective Kwan said. I need you to talk to Victoria, wearing a wire. See if you can get her to admit to anything. Absolutely not, Dr. Brennan said immediately. That's too dangerous. It's the fastest way to get evidence admissible in court, Detective Kwan said. Everything else we have is circumstantial. We need her saying something incriminating in her own words. I'll do it, Sophie said quietly. Sophie? No. Dad, if I don't do this, she'll just move on to another family. Another girl. How many times has she done this? 3 times that we know of. How many others are there that we don't know about? Emma reached across the table and took Sophie's hand. I'll be there with you, in the surveillance van. You won't be alone. The plan was set for the next morning. Sophie would meet Victoria in a neutral location, a coffee shop in Richmond Hill. Detective Kwan would have officers positioned throughout the area. Emma and I would be in a surveillance van parked nearby. That night, Dr. Brennan and Sophie stayed in a hotel under police protection. I went home but barely slept, running through every possible scenario in my mind. At 8 the next morning, we gathered at the police station. Sophie was fitted with a wire, a tiny microphone hidden in her necklace. She looked terrified but determined. Remember, Detective Kwan coached her, don't accuse her directly. Just express doubt, confusion. Make her think you're still under her control. People like Victoria need to feel dominant. If she thinks she's winning, she'll talk. Sophie nodded, her hands shaking. Victoria had agreed to meet, thinking this was her chance to talk sense into Sophie. She'd arrived at the coffee shop early, choosing a table in the back corner. Watching her through the surveillance feed, I could see her composure. She looked calm, confident, in control. Sophie walked in at exactly 9 o'clock. She looked small and vulnerable, which was exactly what we wanted. Victoria stood, opened her arms as if for a hug. Sophie flinched slightly, but forced herself forward. Sophie, sweetheart. Victoria's voice came through crystal clear in our earpieces. I'm so glad you agreed to meet. Your father and I have been so worried about you. I'm sorry, Sophie said, her voice small. I'm sorry about everything. It's all right, dear. I know you've been having a hard time. Dr. Morrison and I both understand. You're not well. I feel so confused, Sophie said, exactly as coached. Sometimes I remember things one way, but everyone tells me they happen differently. Like the stairs, I thought. But maybe I did just fall. You did fall, sweetheart. You've been under so much stress. The medication imbalance probably made you dizzy. That's why it's so important that you take your pills consistently. The pills make me feel weird, though. That's just part of the treatment process. It takes time for your body to adjust. But Dr. Morrison and I know what's best for you. Even if I feel like I'm losing myself, Victoria leaned forward, her voice dropping. Sophie, do you really think your judgment is reliable right now? You called a retired teacher in the middle of the night making wild accusations. You've pushed away all your friends. Your grades are failing. Your father is considering having you committed because he's genuinely afraid you're a danger to yourself. Don't you think it might be time to admit you need help? But the money is being managed properly by professionals. You're 17 years old. You don't understand investment strategy. $73,000 is just gone. It's not gone. It's invested. Sophie, this paranoia, these obsessive thoughts about money, about me, about everything, these are all symptoms. You need treatment, not accusations. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Then, in a smaller voice, what happens if I don't agree to treatment? Victoria's expression shifted, just slightly. Became colder. Then your father and I will have to make the decision for you. The petition for involuntary commitment is already filed. If you're not willing to accept help voluntarily, we'll have to ensure you get it anyway. You'd lock me up? We'd get you the help you need, in a safe environment where you can't hurt yourself or others. It's already arranged. There's a spot waiting for you at Maplewood Psychiatric. Dr. Morrison will oversee your treatment personally. For how long? As long as it takes. Weeks, months, however long until you're stable. And if I tell people what really happened, about the pushing, about the pills, about everything, Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her voice took on an edge. Who would believe you, Sophie? You're a mentally unstable teenager with documented psychiatric issues. I'm a respected principal, your father's wife, a pillar of the community. You've already shown you're willing to make false accusations. Anything you say now will just confirm that you need help. Like Emma. The smile froze. What? Emma Morrison. Your first stepdaughter. The one you had committed. Victoria's face went blank. Perfectly, terrifyingly blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. And what about Samantha Porter? What happened to her? Victoria stood abruptly. This conversation is over. You're clearly having an episode. I'm calling Dr. Morrison right now to initiate the emergency hold. Wait, Sophie said, standing too. Just tell me one thing. Why? Why do you do this? For a moment, Victoria just stared at her. Then something cracked in her expression, and what came out was terrifying in its honesty. Because I can, she said simply. Because men like your father, like all of them, are so desperate for a perfect wife, a perfect family, that they'll believe anything I tell them. Their daughters are inconvenient, messy, complicated. I'm simple. I'm supportive. I make their lives easier. And if the daughters get in the way, she shrugged. Well, troubled teenagers are so tragically common, aren't they? Nobody questions when another one falls apart. You killed Samantha. Victoria smiled. I made Samantha's death look like an accident. Just like I made Emma's suicide attempt look like mental illness. Just like I would have made your death look like an accident too, eventually. But you had to go and call that teacher. You had to make things complicated. You would have killed me? Once the money was fully transferred, and your father was properly dependent on me? Yes, probably a car accident. Teenage drivers are so reckless. Or maybe another fall, this time fatal. Your father would have grieved, leaned on me, and eventually moved on. They always do. Sophie took a step back, real fear in her eyes now. You're insane. No, sweetheart. I'm smart. I've done this 4 times now. 4 families, 4 stepdaughters. Emma was the only one who survived, and even she was so broken afterward that nobody believed her. You would have been number 5. But now, Victoria tilted her head, considering, now you're a problem that needs to be solved. She reached into her purse, and Detective Kwan's voice crackled in our earpieces. Move in. Now. Police officers appeared from every direction. Victoria's hand was still in her purse when they grabbed her, pulling out a syringe filled with clear liquid. Insulin, Detective Kwan said later, holding the evidence bag. Enough to kill Sophie within minutes, and it would have looked like a diabetic emergency. She was going to do it right there in the coffee shop, then call 911 and play the distraught stepmother. Victoria was charged with attempted murder, fraud, child abuse, and conspiracy. The investigation into Samantha Porter's death was officially reopened. Dr. Morrison was arrested as an accessory and lost her license immediately. 2 more stepdaughters came forward over the following weeks. Women now in their 20s and 30s, who'd been through similar experiences with Victoria under different names, different cities. The pattern went back 17 years. Victoria's trial lasted 6 weeks. I testified about Sophie's call and what I'd found. Emma testified about her experiences. The other survivors testified. The evidence was overwhelming. She was sentenced to 25 years with no possibility of parole for 15. Sophie spent the next year in therapy, real therapy, working through the trauma. Dr. Brennan sold the house, moved to a smaller place, cut his hours at the hospital to spend more time with his daughter. They started to rebuild their relationship. Slowly. Sophie graduated high school with honors. She got into McGill after all, on that same scholarship. She's studying social work now, like Emma. They stay in touch. I testified at the College of Psychologists hearing that resulted in stricter oversight of therapist-patient relationships. The Anderson Protocol, some people started calling it, though I never liked the name. It requires secondary review when mental health professionals are treating minors in complex family situations. A year after the trial, Sophie came to visit me. She'd just finished her first semester at university and wanted to show me her grades. Straight as. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said. "Nobody else believed me." "You believed yourself," I told her. "You knew something was wrong, even when everyone was telling you it wasn't. That's the strongest thing a person can do. Did you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't called you? If I'd just given up?" I had thought about it, too many times. But you didn't give up. You made that call. You asked for help. Because I remembered something you said in class once. You were talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, about Atticus standing up for Tom Robinson even though everyone said he shouldn't. You said that sometimes the hardest thing in the world is standing up when you're alone, when everyone else is sitting down. But that's also when it matters most. I didn't remember saying that, but I was glad I had. Sophie's story spread through my network of retired teachers. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder to pay attention when students suddenly change, when something feels wrong even if we can't quite name it. I'm 71 now. 7 years since that phone call at 3 in the morning. I think about it sometimes about how close we came to losing Sophie, how many others we might have lost before her that no one noticed. But I also think about the fact that one person paying attention was enough. One person believing a scared teenager was enough to bring down a predator who'd been operating for nearly 2 decades. Victoria's appeals have all been denied. She'll be in prison for a long time. The other survivors have started a foundation called Someone Believed Me, supporting teenagers in abusive family situations. Emma's a licensed social worker now, specializing in family therapy. Sophie's on track to join her after graduation. Dr. Brennan and I have coffee sometimes. He's dating again, carefully, but his relationship with Sophie is stronger than ever. As for me, I'm fully retired now. No more teaching. But I still answer my phone, no matter what time it rings. Just in case. Because that's what I learned in 42 years as a teacher, and in those terrifying days trying to save Sophie. Sometimes, the middle of the night brings bad news. But sometimes, it brings a chance to make a difference. And that's enough to make it worth answering.